Hello and welcome to Move the Line. Not Prop Drop Show. I wish it was the Prop Drop Show. I'm so used to it. Presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here as always back stateside after a little hiatus off. Connor Allen, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, it feels good to be back. I'm alive. Not as sick anymore, but you were sick now with something else. I don't think the same thing, thankfully. Wouldn't wish that upon anyone, but I think you're doing better too, right?
I'm doing a little bit better. You can tell at the top, maybe I don't have my fastball open up, prop drop notes. So I have my prop drop open at the top just by, like Ron Burgundy, just read what's on the sheet. So, I wish I had what you had, because that means that I would have gone to like Mexico and had, drank the water. And, I guess it's a side effect of obviously being there, not to do so, but at least you're also there. I mean, you came back here to Chicago and it's like 10 degrees and windy and brutal.
It's cold.
So, yeah, it's cold.
It's real cold.
So good to have you back. And excited. We're turning the page. It is playoff season. We're excited to talk briefly about our thoughts on all of these matchups this week. Probably dabble in a little bit of future discussion. We've been dancing around. Hey, do we give some time at the top to futures and awards? Because the pricing in the award market would tell you right now that they're mostly dead. Again, in terms of like, the awards voting starts to roll in now. But you can still bet on these markets and they can still move a little bit. So while the football that is supposedly goes into deciding these outcomes is over, the markets are still live and up there for you to bet on too. So also want to remind folks as well, obviously, as I tried to tell you, 2 episodes of Move Line each week. Friday's the Prop Drop Show. We'll be back as always, 3 p.m. Eastern, to get into all of our super wild card weekend props. If you take 30 seconds, review the show or subscribe, or thumbs up, all those things go a long way in helping us keep these shows free. If you're watching now on the 4for4bets YouTube channel, you can do that there as well. You can find Move the Line wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also go to 4for4.com/plans, scoop up a betting sub. Fantasy is over. Hopefully you won lots of titles, but we can still bet, right? And it's a communal process. We like doing that together. We have a great Discord community that I think if you've never been a part of, that you would really enjoy. Fantasy is a lot of head-to-head. You versus your boys. You got secret, like 4for4. You don't want to really let people know that you have that in your, back pocket. Betting is all communal. We like to win together, sweat together. Really, really cheap right now. Less than $20 to sweat the playoffs with us as well. Get in, get a sample of what that's like. Check that out, 4for4.com/plants. We're going to talk about some of the lines available through our partner over at ProfitX. If you're not familiar with it, is a sports exchange that is just, I don't know. We had a guest on from ProfitX. We're going to have him on again soon, talking about kind of their space in the market. I mean, user versus user, peer versus peer, instead of you against the house, keeps the VIG down. Basically, 15, 20% versus standard lines. We're going to talk about some of those lines today. Great way to get down, especially if liquidity is an issue for you. Available in, over 40 states. Head to profitx.com and you can download that app. Use that promo code BetSperts and you'll get a $300 profit cash over your next 30 days to use to kind of check that out. So highly, highly recommend that. Do you want to touch on anything in the awards market? I mean, we're touching on, it feels like MVP in general, market sentiment is very different than what like talking head narratives are at this point, or even anything you're reading feels significantly more like a 50-50 toss up compared to maybe the last time we spoke. Though again, the betting market is telling you that is Josh Allen hammer time. But it seems to be like a growing community of, hey, look, Lamar Jackson's been awesome. Lamar Jackson's been better than previous MVP iterations of Lamar Jackson. What are your thoughts on MVP?
Yeah, Josh Allen minus 450 right now. Lamar Jackson plus 320. It's kind of tough to argue with that. I think, like you mentioned, you could probably speculatively play Lamar at plus 320 if you felt like there was enough momentum there. There's usually a couple of people that try and collect information on like who's voting for who and things like that. And it is closer than, I think the odds suggest. I'm just not sure if like that's not, it just probably won't win. So like that's, again, it's not even like you're going to get CLV on it. You're just going to be like, oh, well, it was actually a 60-40, win instead of a 80% or 90% implied that Josh Allen is here. So you don't get partial credit. He either wins or he doesn't. So unfortunately, I think that right now Josh Allen's probably, the look to win, but I'm not laying minus 450 because you never know. There's some weird first place, second place voting stuff that I don't really fully understand.
Yeah. Yeah. The way it's tabulated, that can mess some stuff up. I agree with you. Yeah. It might be minus 160 plus 140, whatever. Like, it's just not, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a binary outcome. I don't think Josh did anything to lose the stranglehold that he seemed to have had early in December, even though, Lamar played really good football down the stretch. Lamar played really good football all season long. And I don't think you can use the Lamar statistical relevance of what he did in other seasons to make your argument for this season per se. But if it comes down to a team award, positionally, right? They lost head to head, I guess the Bills did, but fewer losses for the Bills overall. I mean, I think it's a close race, but I like to see Josh win personally. So I don't know.
Also, I don't disagree. Also, just like a public service announcement, if anyone is trying to use like EPA as a crutch as their argument, like I promise you, they don't care about that. The voters don't care about that. The only one who even knows what EPA is probably Mina Kimes. I mean, that's like probably the only, like some of the other voters I'm sure know what it is, but don't care about that stuff. So like, it doesn't matter.
It'd be like using, pass rush win rate to determine defensive player of the year or something like that. Like, it's just one's
a great segue. I mean, what do you think about Patrick Surtain?
So it's fascinating to me. We were touching on this earlier before we, hit live. It's an outlier for a cornerback to win this award. Last time was Stephon Gilmore a couple of years ago. Pats were the number 1 seed. They were the best defense in the league by far. I think he led the league in interceptions. Lots of big plays. It was just routinely shadowing, doing some of the things that Surtain is. So this is not a knock on him as a player. I think he's terrific. It's just surprising. And again, it makes sense in a season where we don't have a massive sack total from an edge rusher on a playoff team, that you would have something like this happen. We've kind of been pretty consistent that we thought TJ Watt was bad chalk. Again, not because TJ Watt's not awesome, but because he's just statistically not putting up mind-bending numbers. And, we thought there was a chance they were going to limp into the playoffs, and as what happened. But now we've moved out. Suddenly it was like a flip, and it was like all of a sudden Surtain's minus 250 out of nowhere. Now that's climbed to minus 500, where he is, feels like, he's a bigger favorite than Josh Allen is to be MVP. No one really emerged, but I don't know. It still feels like now it's new bad chalk. I just don't understand how he got here. He didn't have a moment. He didn't have, game-changing pick 6. His teammate did, who had multiple scores this year, who was, a great story. Also one of the league leaders in sacks. He's 100-1. But Surtain is minus 500. So you definitely, any play is betting strongly against the market, but I don't really even know how we got here. Typically, right?
Yeah. Like, he's just been really good, and corners are tough because like most people aren't looking like, oh, he's only allowed this many yards in coverage or like, things like that, because it's kind of goes unnoticed, like you mentioned, without like big interceptions or big moments. And so, this one's a tough one for me. I'm not enough of a ball knower and award knower to know like, oh, like, well, actually a lot of people are going to vote for someone else or this guy, like, or whatever, to really present value, because I don't really like most of the other guys either. And I think this is like, I don't think there's a ton of guys with a great case that are around there. I mean, Nick Bonito is fine, but he's 100-1 probably for a reason. Like, I don't know. It's just tough to think that like, oh yeah, they're going to not only not vote for Surtain, but they're going to vote for Bonito as well.
I agree.
Would they avoid putting 2 Broncos on the ballot too? Like, that could just completely make him dead.
We got into some of that in years past where it's, we had that last year, even at the MVP discussion, right? Where it's like Brock Purdy and CMC were cannibalizing each other. And it's like, well, are they? I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I think if you were going to splash this market at all, it is Benito at 100. It seems too long. But again, another one of these scenarios where it's like, all right, he's 100. He probably should be 10. But if he's not going to win, it doesn't really matter, right? But like going back through it, if Watt couldn't kind of run away as the clear favorite, 7-1 doesn't make a lot of sense. Hendrickson made a push. And if you would have had a backdoor Bengals playoff berth, then maybe you would have a chance. Because again, leading the league in sacks, getting some on an island game, to try to put them into the playoffs, stacking 3 again, like just an awesome season. It just is somewhat unprecedented in the last 15, 20 years for someone to win this award on a team that's not in the playoffs. So that makes it really, really hard for him. If that's the case, it makes no sense that even Myles Garrett being 75 and Hendrickson is 7, right? Because they're both kind of in the same boat. Kirby Joseph makes no sense to me at 30, but again, at least he has a high number of interceptions. Not because he's not a good player, but like it can be alignment based. It's just, they're so random in terms of interceptions. So, Van Ginkel's been awesome. Yeah. Should he be way different than his teammate at 30 when, Jonathan Grenard is 150? No, but also none of this makes any sense or makes a difference if they're not winning. So it's just, I don't know. I think splashing a little bit on Benito at 100 makes a little sense to me, but again, I could be way off here. Surtain numbers, probably the one that's moving and is as strong as anything in the market right now.
I mean, hey, if you want to just donate $5 to DraftKings to DKNG, just so that you can be like, you know what? He got more than 100 votes. I feel good about myself. Like I beat the market. I got that CLV kind of, it was a plus EV play on paper. So you can pat yourself on the back.
Thank you.
And know that, maybe if you invest in DKNG, your stock will go up. That's all you care about.
Well, I have DKNG stock. It's not going up. First of all, they also won't take $5 bet. So
yeah, I don't think they will either. Let's see. That's tough, dude. DKNG. I mean, they're them and then Flutter. Did you see the Flutter story, by the way, the FanDuel one?
No.
It was pretty funny. So something came out yesterday, their press release. And so Flutter, the parent company of FanDuel, was like, they said this was the most customer-friendly quarter in 20 years. And like the headline that was from someone who wrote the article was like, FanDuel got slammed, like customers, like crushed them, like and then like quoted the press release. But they put the numbers in the press release. So I'm like, really, how much did they lose? I'm like, that's crazy. Flutter as a company adjusted their revenue like projections from 606 billion to 570 billion. They like dropped 30 billion or whatever it was. And then their EBITDA, which is, essentially just how much they're taking home at the end of the day, went from like 300 million to like 220 million. Like that was what are they going to do? This is, how are they going to survive on 220 million? You know what I mean? Like, which I understand shareholders probably pissed. Stock, sure. I'm sure went down, but though just the way it was framed in the context of what was written about it, I was like these people are crying fucking wolf and they're making $220 million. Like, what are we doing here?
It's all about being relative to the projections for your shareholders. So it's a big L. Yeah, that's tough.
Real. So good.
Coach of the year, Kevin O'Connell, again, kind of in the ballpark of everyone, minus 450. Dan Campbell next to 3-1. Then your big drop off using FanDuel's or DraftKings' odds here. Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, Harbaugh. Is there a hole to be punched in this, considering how things ended on Sunday night with a strong Dan Campbell win, locking it up, or is it still Kevin O'Connell in your eyes?
I mean, yeah, if I'm voting for this, I'm voting for Dan Campbell. Like, I don't understand even like what we're doing here. He beat him twice and they're like 16-1. I mean, Kevin O'Connell made more with less, I guess. That's the only argument, right? Like, but like, I mean, I don't know.
It's been the award, right?
Yeah. I guess that's the truth, right? Is like, you're just doing more with less. It's not even about being the best or anything. I don't know. I mean, Dan Campbell, I think generally, and Ben Johnson have done a lot with, they have a lot sometimes, but like their defense has been beat up. Their, offense, like Jared Goff was never a household name until, last couple of years, basically. Like he played pretty poorly from time to time. I don't know. Like Jameson Williams is basically doing something illegal like once a week at this point. I mean, like
allegedly,
yeah. Hasn't been caught yet. I don't know. It's like this Lions team is kind of scrappy too. Like, and the Vikings have plenty of players. I don't know. I just like, I get it. Kevin O'Connell's had a great season, but I feel like Dan Campbell beating him twice, like especially like triumphantly beating him with like a beat up defense, should have been, I thought, at least evener, like made it 50-50. Now we're looking at minus 450, Kevin O'Connell, plus 300 Dan Campbell. So I don't know. This award just always pisses me off. Just I can never get a good read on it. So don't bet whatever I'm saying on it. That's
Are
all
you
I gotta
betting?
say.
Are you betting Dan Campbell?
No.
Okay.
I should though, probably.
You probably
But then
should.
Kevin O'Connell's gonna win. Then Kevin O'Connell's gonna win. I'm betting it. Whatever. Fuck it. I don't care. I'm betting Dan Campbell. $14, bastards. All right.
Yes, dude, that is amazing.
Like
You can get a margarita at Maria's for that.
if Dan Campbell wins.
If he wins, I don't hate it. I think you're right, but again, it could be another one of those scenarios where it's just, if it becomes very clear to us based off of what the voters do here again, if it's just, I don't know, this is them telling on themselves. I guess even more so would be drilling home the point that it is a exceeding expectations award versus coach of the year award. Because also I think, the media is weird with Dan Campbell. At some point here in the next 5 years, it will drastically turn on Dan Campbell because it's just the nature of like we build people up and we break you down so we can get a comeback story and you come back. Right now, it's everyone loves Dan Campbell. How can you not want to play for a guy like that? And there's, he goes to war for his guys, and he's all like the bravado that you had in the day one press conference that people were like, "What the hell is this?" Now everyone loves just like, "Oh my gosh, I love that so much," and at some point it'll turn. I'm guessing, but I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for people loving him so much that he can overcome the high expectations that the Lions had this season. But again, I think this will be really indicative of how we need to approach this award moving forward based off of these results. Because I think it is a really strong indicator of exceeding expectations versus just kind of consistently being awesome.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Hunter brings up a good point. Just takes the fourth downs going wrong and then NFC Championship Super Bowl for everyone to turn. I also think that losing Ben Johnson is going to be really interesting.
And probably Aaron Glenn. Maybe, possibly.
Right. Like, you're losing both your coordinators. Like, I don't think Dan Campbell himself is a particularly good, like, X's and O's coach by any means. He's just a good motivator. So, like, I think it puts a lot of pressure on the coordinators to be better, whoever they are. And they obviously have plenty of good players, but yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see what that win total looks like next year. I'm interested to see how we can fade them with the Vikings, with the Packers, and hopefully the Bears. God forbid, being a little bit better next year. So just something to keep in mind, I think, in the future.
Yeah. Comeback player of the year. We had GRP wins on to talk about his, Sam Darnold ticket at the time, which was like, hey, people are punching holes in your Sam Darnold ticket because by the letter of the law now, he seems to not be eligible. But, they've said it's just kind of a guideline. Again, this is the worst award anyway. So, like, the fact that this is like this so much discrepancy in how this award and what qualifies for this award, it makes all the sense in the award. I'm not sure how Joe Burrow, I guess, qualifies for this award. He played like 10, 11 games last season. Was really good. Didn't finish the season. It's been awesome. So finding a way to award Joe Burrow for an awesome season, I guess, is making the favorite for comeback player of the year. Sam Darnold as well. He didn't play last season. And then you get to some other scenarios like J.K. Dobbins coming back from an injury, Damar Hamlin coming back from the dead. I don't know. I still think that the Hamlin thing is really interesting. Like, he started all year for the Bills. Last year, the argument was we can't possibly give this guy the award. He played 3 snaps, defensive snaps all season outside of special teams. This year, he played like 90% of the snaps on a team that's 2 seed, has maybe the league MVP. I don't know. Is Hamlin at 80 crazy, or what do you do with the comeback player of the year?
It just shows like dying isn't enough. Then what is enough? Like, what does it take? Like Alex Smith had that whole thing, but he almost died. He never actually died. That
True.
was like, that's the thing. So maybe you just have to almost die. Like if you actually die, you're just like immediately disqualified.
That's a good point.
Because I guess for 30 seconds, you weren't even like alive. So you weren't a real person. Right. So it just must erase it from the voter's
biggest
memory.
comeback that there is. Theoretically.
Literally, I think Jesus Christ wouldn't qualify for the comeback player of the year. He died. I just can't believe it. I totally agree. I bet it a while ago. I don't remember when. One time during the show, I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then the odds just never moved. So I'm done donating to the Damar Death Award. Comeback here. But I think
is there a statute of limitations from coming back? Because that's your only argument is that because he didn't do it within that calendar year, he's outside the statute of limitations from coming back. That's it. That's the Hamlin.
I feel like he should even be like more qualified now because he died, came back, but like didn't play, and then now is playing, because he's like better. So like he qualifies like Darnold like was trash and now is playing again and is playing well. And I don't know, like I feel like under that guys, which he could be qualified, but I don't know. It's none of again, this is another award that makes no sense to me. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. There was like a massive amount of Darnold's team like a week, maybe a couple days ago. Like they were even money. Like Burrow was plus 115 at one point, like in the last week. And I was in Mexico, so I couldn't bet it. But I thought that was a good look. I mean, I think Burrow has to win something. He played at such a high level. Like
It was awesome.
he obviously can't win MVP, but and who's going to win OPY?
Saquon.
Yeah. So I mean, this is probably just Burrow's award, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even have offensive player of the year right now, but Saquon was such a runaway favorite. Again, this is the thought of like this being a great case for like Lamar. Like if you want to make a case for giving Lamar something outside of the MVP because of his statistical season, offensive player of the year would be make a ton of sense. But seems that has been sealed and delivered already to Saquon. And again, 2,000-yard season seems awesome. Hard not to argue. Just poking holes in the chalk here. The chalk feels as bad as ever in some of these markets right now. So,
I mean, I wonder. I don't know. Maybe you're right, and maybe we should just be taking like a bunch of stabs across the board, like long shots, and just like, I mean, Flacco was like crazy odds heading into it. Like there was a bunch of ones that were like wild odds, and then some people just like didn't even vote for Damar Hamlin. I don't know. There's maybe people just hate Damar Hamlin. I don't know. Maybe that's like there could be some other things at play here potentially, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's not even actually Damar Hamlin. We know that.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's why he's like a clone, or what did they say? He's like
he was cloned. Yeah.
Is he a crisis actor?
He's a crisis actor. He was cloned, and that day that he was in the box and waved, that was just a hologram, I believe.
Yeah, I forgot about all that. That was that before Elon bought Twitter, or was that the same time? Because if
a great question.
If it was at the same time, I mean, that shit would be popping off on our feeds right now. The For You feed would be going nuts.
Well, I hear Damar Hamlin was actually the guy that drove the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel in Vegas. It wasn't actually you're telling you this. So.
Makes sense why no one's voting for him then. Makes sense.
Stay awake, people. Okay. All right. Let's jump into the super wild card round here. Lots of coaching stuff. We'll get into it in the offseason. Coaching carousel continuing to evolve, and I think it will, obviously, as we go through the playoffs here. Typical trend of coaches getting plucked off of playoff teams too. So lots of things to discuss. We'll get to that later in the season. Again, why you have to subscribe, because we don't take a break. I would take like a break the week after the Super Bowl or something like that, but then we hit the ground running, start talking draft, start talking off-season stuff right away. All right, first game Saturday. As always, if you've seen this, poor Texans, like all the times in the playoffs, they get the what Bill Simmons would call the Shakey's game. It is like the worst typical game of the week, which is, I don't even think that's necessarily the case here, but the Texans here in the front spot on Saturday afternoon, some different prices out there. We're kind of hovering between 2.5 and 3. If you want to bring up the Profit X lines, we can kind of get to see what our prices are out there right now. Total dipped to opened around 44.5, which is, I hate that I missed it, because I think 44.5 under is a really, really strong look in this game. 42.5, pretty much out there, readily available now. Probably still lean under a little bit on that. You have to pay a little bit of freight for juicy 44.5 now. You can see, well, I mean, that's not even that bad, to be honest. Under 146, right, sitting around a key number. Just, limping in here on the Texan side. And obviously the dynamic with their offense, losing Steph Diggs, losing Tank Dell. It's been kind of a step back year for CJ Stroud, but part of that is some of the injuries. The offensive line has really struggled as well. If you look at composite CPOE and EPA per play, it's been towards the bottom all season long. I think they're 31st in offensive success rate. Limping in. Chargers feel like a very chalky road favorite here as well, with their own questions offensively, at least in terms of ceiling. That's why I thought the under in the game, especially at 40-48, 44.5 made a ton of sense. But do you have a lean here early on Chargers Texans?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see this as Chargers 3-point road favorites. I kind of thought it would just be about like a pick. I mean, which is crazy. I don't know if I really want to be caught holding Houston, +3 here, but I
get
think
it,
that
though.
that's probably, yeah, I think it's probably, the move here. Like we're looking at Texans, I think should be able to actually run the ball in the Chargers. Chargers played really good run defense early in the season. That kind of broke down like later on. We know the Texans want to run the ball. And if they can, I think that opens up a lot for them. I also don't really know how the Chargers are going to contain Nico Collins specifically. So, and to be honest, besides all this, like just anecdotally, I would not be surprised to see CJ Stroud just like step up in a big moment here after playing, like you mentioned, pretty poorly, I would say most of the season, or just like average, kind of took a step back. So I don't know. I think a couple of those factors together, I mean, you're getting 3 points at home with a quarterback we know is more than capable. Like, yes, he doesn't have all his weapons. Yes, his offensive line is not great, but I think there's some paths here where they win outright. Like I think it's very, very, very possible. So as much as I've been a Chargers fan all year, I think that Houston is the right side here.
Yeah, I would say if you like Houston, you wouldn't even mess with these points. I think you just take the money line. It's probably the best way to get that. I would lean plus 142. Yeah. And they're also a nice spot too, to tease up. Because again, sitting at 2.5 through the 3, through the 7, and a spot where we're expecting, pretty low point total. Expect the Chargers to go run away with anything here, regardless. I think it's probably a 1-score game. So I would lean Chargers, especially, under 3, but it's not a play that I'm dying to make. I'm with you. I think there's some opportunities here for them to strike. I still think that there's, the Chargers defense has been, probably outperforming what the actual unit is all season long. And I think they will be able to run the ball here too, which is interesting. So, yeah, I mean, probably the best way to go about it would be Texans money line, tease the game, or if you like the Chargers, I'd make sure you find the 2.5 because they are out there. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, you can get pressure on this Chargers team, but, that's obviously something that the Texans do really well. You can get obviously a ton of pressure on the Texans as well, but typically that's coming from the inside. So you're probably going to have to see some stunts and some different stuff that some unique looks that brings that pressure in, down the throat really for Stroud. Because basically center guard has been really problematic all season between injuries and just poor performance all season long. It's again, why I like the under. I think there could be, lots of, 3 and outs, some sacks that flip the field and stuff like that. So I'm kind of with you though. It feels like an overcorrection, especially since it seems like I haven't heard anyone talk about the Texans this week. No one seems to be on the Texans. People are talking about the Chargers upsetting the Chiefs next week, right? Like we're just getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. So, all right. Next we have the Steelers in Baltimore against the Ravens. This one's got cooked out through the teaser zone because we were right there around 7.5, 8 at open. 10 met some resistance. We got to the 10s basically. I've been bought back 9.5 for the most part across the board. Totals kind of hovering in the same spot there as the first game, around 43.5 in the marketplace. There are some, I don't know, you can tell me if you think it's true. And I don't, want to take your handicap away. There's some really lazy handicapping on this one. It feels like if you want to start to talk to me about this matchup and what happened when these two teams played in 2016, or how these two teams are always play close, like you lose me right away. Like I am completely out on anything that you have to say after that, because if you want to tell me that the laundry from this side and the laundry from that side match up this way, and this is historically going to be a 19-17 game because they always are, that's really stupid to me. We just saw this game and it was a 17-point game. Yes, that was without George Pickens. But this Steelers team has kind of turned into maybe who we thought they were. I'm not super excited to lay this number, Connor, but like I'm hearing a lot of handicapping just being like, you got to take the points. These are always close games. Look, if you date back to 2015, this day, like, so stupid. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a pretty tough one for me because if Zay Flowers was in, I'd feel pretty good, I think, about laying it with Baltimore. Just because he's like, I would say they're one primary functional receiver that can consistently win. Rashad Bateman is fine. He's like an outside receiver. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, like Mark Andrews, like kind of oscillates between being great and like a geriatric. Like you never really know which one you're going to get. And then Isaiah Likely is randomly turned up. So for me, it's just like not consistent. And I mean, we see this all the time. Lamar gets there, gets in the playoffs. If he falls behind, without Zay Flowers, I mean, they're just toast. Like if they like Pittsburgh returns 2 punts, like they're gonna lose outright. Like the Baltimore's losing outright. So just something ridiculous like that happened. And that's just kind of the risk that we've seen with Baltimore. But if they play in a normal game script, I mean, Baltimore probably wins by 10 plus. And I think that's the most likely outcome. Again, like the other outcome was like kind of fluky. And I don't really see Pittsburgh's offense doing enough to like put Baltimore in that, playing from behind kind of space there that we talked about is like basically a systemic risk to Lamar at all times, essentially. So I think in this spot here, I kind of like Baltimore. Their defense has been playing way better. They talked about it in the broadcast a bunch, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know, last time to time before, about how they moved some of their secondary around and started switching things up, and it like made a dramatic change for them like week 11 on, I think. So I don't know. I like this defense. George Pickens, kind of had an off game last week, and the running game is not working as well. This Ravens run defense with Michael Pierce is a great run defensive unit. So like they match up well in that aspect. And I think their offense will still have success on the other side. Like I just, I don't think they're going to probably drop like 40 on them or anything, but like, could they score 27 to 30? Yeah, no problem. I think a lot of that happens probably through Derrick Henry, through Lamar on the ground.
Yeah. Those are all good points. Since week 11, they made those changes first in EPA against the pass. I mean, this is a team that we were just trying to find ways to get like longest reception, passing yards over, receivers over. It was really, really bad. Cutting Eddie Jackson, benching Marcus Williams. They moved, Marlon Humphrey into the slot, Kyle Hamilton back. It's been, Darius Washington's been awesome. So yeah, they've been a really, really strong unit. So yeah, part of it is like, I'm not super excited to lay the 9.5. Baltimore, it's probably the side. I think if you like Pittsburgh, I think you should just have the Stones and like Connor's point, just go money line. Like I think there could be live to win if this game gets just wonky. Taking plus the points because what is it?
Plus 430.
Ooh. Yeah, taking the points here because these games historically are always close is that's not it for me. So yeah, I don't know. There's more ways to go about it. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see, again, not trending well for Zay Flowers, and that definitely impacts the ceiling, to your point, of what we can expect for this Ravens offense. Yeah, all right, first game on. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, DNP first 2 days. They play on Saturday. First game on Saturday, or second game on Saturday, but still, so like realistically has to practice tomorrow, limited essentially at all to have a chance. Like he has to be limited tomorrow. If not, then he's basically out. So
yeah. It looked like just like a bruise. Like I can't say that as I sit here, and I'm not on the field. But I'm just saying, like, it didn't look like it was a sprain. It looked like he took a helmet to the inside of his knee, which I'm sure hurts like hell. It makes it very, very sore. But in terms of like structural stuff, it feels like just we can work through that pain. The bruising goes down. Starts to get a little bit more mobility back. He probably is okay if they start to move forward. So it didn't seem like it was going to be anything like ligament wise. Just fell awkward. Guy came on top of him, and I think he took a helmet right there. All right, first Sunday game, Broncos Bills. This is still hovering in the teaser zone. 8.5s out there. There are some 9s. Total sitting around key numbers as well. 46.5, 47. If you shop that around here, you could see some of the stuff that we have on Profit X, some pretty good prices there. Don't hate that at all. Interesting game. Obviously, just blanket statements, betting on rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs on the road, probably a pretty good fade lifetime. I don't have that data in front of me, but it's probably the right way to go about things. The Broncos are feisty. I do think that there are some things they do defensively that can cause trouble for the Bills, but also really bode well for the way that the Bills like to play offense too, with, a lot of blitzing. Doesn't really work against Josh Allen, takes sacks at a very low rate, creates man-to-man behind them a lot. That's not really great historically against Josh Allen either. You get Amari Cooper back here as well, came back to practice today. So thoughts on Broncos Bills?
Yeah, Amari's huge for them as someone who I think can help separate in short to intermediate spaces. Like him and Khalil Shakir probably pretty big focal point, I would guess. Maybe a little more Curtis Samuel too. I mean, I don't know. They used him a bunch last week, obviously in like a game that didn't really matter, but it seemed
it did matter. That game mattered, Connor. It ruined my day. It ruined part of my week.
It looked like they wanted to lose, like legit.
They
Like
did.
you know,
They out tanked the Patriots.
they did because they wanted the team in their division to have a worse draft pick, and like I mean, it's genius. It's incredible. It was so good. I mean, they benched what's his name? They put in Mike White, and like he just couldn't move the ball at the end of the game. Like it was, I think MVP Mitch was moving it a little too well, and they're like, shit, we got to lose this. Like this is a little too close, and so. Yeah, they pulled the trigger, and Joe Milton. I mean, Joe Milton looked great, to be honest.
He did.
Like, I mean, he looked awesome.
He did.
He looked
I
like
had a buddy last year, before draft, it was like March or something like that. And we were talking about what do the Patriots need to do, and he's like, "Well, you need to get better. You wanted to take Marvin." He's like, let's just take Joe Milton at like the 6th or 7th rounds. Let's like leave it alone. We don't need Drake May. Let's just go get Marvin Harrison. Let's go get something else, and let's just let Joe Milton go. I'm like, okay, well, so I texted him before the game started. I'm like, this is on you if this blows up. And sure enough, it did. Joe Milton looked good. He cooked.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, yeah, it's tough. He looked awesome. I mean, I don't think they're going to trade him, but we'll see. He looked like what we all thought Anthony Richardson was going to be, ideally. So, but I mean, it was against a bunch of backups, and like it's not a really game we should put a ton of stock into. But
not for sure.
Anyways, this one, no, I know we kind of got derailed there. Denver, Buffalo. Denver's a really tough team for me because they just keep winning games and playing well. And I don't really think they're very good, but they just like keep playing well. I guess it's like none of their receivers have consistent usage outside of Cortland Sutton. All of their running backs, basically, it's been a lot of Jaleel McLaughlin lately. But like, I mean, they were talking about like a 2 to 3 week sample. Like Sean Payton could wake up tomorrow and this guy could be benched again. Like we have just no idea. And defensively, they've played mostly pretty well. Obviously, Riley Moss getting injured a little bit a while ago and not coming back, and then still getting roasted. I think someone caught a couple of deep balls against him recently as well. Mm-hmm. But I think in this instance, like I have a tough time seeing Keon Coleman be much of a factor here as a guy who doesn't separate particularly well. So I think they're gonna have to feed the guys over the middle from the Bills. Like it's just a tough game for me because I think at 7, I was pretty interested. 7.5, I was pretty interested in Buffalo. 8.5, 9, we're getting up there. I just have a tough time with it because like we're going to see Bo Nix run a lot. I think he's going to move a good bit, and like he's just played better. Like it's just like from the beginning of the season to now, they've gotten so much better in basically everything that it's just like a tough fade for me because I don't know, maybe just a piece of me is still like loves the Broncos a little bit, but I just like I have a tough time getting there, and then. When they lose by 30, it's going to be the most obvious, Bills should have bet the Bills of all time, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's just, you feel good holding that ticket when at first Josh Allen 20-yard scramble, rushing touchdown. You're like, oh man, just chasing all game. That's going to be a tough one. The Bills defense is disappointed all year. I think they also have had some injuries. They've had injuries really on all 3 levels, dealing with a lot of secondary injuries over the last month in particular. Really kind of just split the season in half. Back half of the season, they have been basically a bottom 3 pass defense. EPA, I think they're dead last in passing success rate since week 10. It's just not good enough. So how the Bills or how the Broncos go about attacking it, I think is going to be interesting to see because we've had a really hard time, playing whack-a-mole. Is going to be this receiver had, back-to-back games of, 18-yard A-dot. And then next week it's -3. They just threw him a bunch of screens. It's this running back. And no, it's not. So how they go about it, we never really know. They seem to land the plane a lot. But again, Josh Allen at home against a team that really makes their bread and butter with getting home and pass rush. Really solidifying what they could do with man coverage has just been a recipe for success for Josh Allen the entirety of the last couple of seasons. So Bills are nothing for me. I really don't have any appetite for the Broncos. And again, 8.5 teased down to 2.5. I think it's a fantastic teaser for the weekend. So I like that one quite a bit.
Yeah, when you look at the Broncos metrics and these are always the teams that I'm I don't really know what to do with this because we've seen them play fine sometimes. Broncos are between 16th and 18th in EPA success rate and for drop back rushing offense, just in basically every category. They're just average. But they win a lot of games and they've won when it mattered. And so that's not particularly a team that I like to bet on because it's usually not sticky, super sticky week to week.
Yeah. All right. Next one, Packers, Eagles, and injury news coming here that it seems for the most part pretty good for both teams outside of obviously the Christian Watson season-ending ACL injury. About 4.5 across the board, varying juice depending on where you're shopping. Obviously, Profit X, fantastic numbers there. 44, 45.5 basically now across the board on the total for this game. Obviously, a rematch from week one, shootout in Mexico, 34-29. Obviously, hard to really extrapolate anything that far back in terms of what we can expect with these teams, but it looks like Jalen Hurts practiced today. That was the encouraging news. I think you're going to see pretty massive movement with this game. If he wasn't practicing today, that was going to be, that's a problem. So it looks encouraging here. Looks like Quay Walker coming back, Evan Williams coming back for the Packers. So their defense is getting healthy, which is the right time for them to handle that here. What are your thoughts on Packers Eagles?
Yeah, I kind of like Philly here. Especially I was kind of waiting for Hurts to be cleared and then, give Philly a little pop here. 4.5, I think, is more than fine. Just overall, I think that their defense matches up pretty well against the Green Bay team without Christian Watson. I think the one player that can really give them problems. Obviously, they still think Jaden Reed a little bit can give them problems just over the middle. But Dobbs, Wicks, the fantasy football hero Wicks that everyone thinks is super good and is just so average to below average. I just think those guys are fine, and the Eagles secondary is mostly handled. I mean, plenty of good receivers throughout the season, especially once they made their own changes as well. So I think that they're going to maybe not slow down entirely, but keep Jordan Love and company in check. Jordan Love was also doing this one weird thing on the sideline, like maybe he hit his funny bone or something like that, but like he kept trying to throw and he just kept like shaking his arm, like he was like, it was very weird. And I was like, all right, well, maybe it was just his funny bone, but he did it for like, he kept trying to come back in and kept doing the same thing. I was like, I don't know. It was just strange. It's something to look out for. And he played pretty poorly when he was in anyways, to be honest. It's a bad Bears defense. So not necessarily the momentum that you want going into a playoff game against an Eagles team that's played pretty well. And then offensively, I think for the Eagles, they have success against a Green Bay defense that this is such an interesting defense. They're 28th in dropback success rate, but 4th in EPA because of turnovers. So on a per play basis, 28th. Overall, they're 4th in EPA when you include turnovers and everything. So, again, another team that I think that's not as much signal, especially if Philly's not going to turn the ball over as much. So I'm interested in Philly, but I know you're a Packers guy or have been in the past. Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's hard. Like you said, they're not playing the way you would want them to be playing coming in right now. Jordan Love feels like just Jekyll and Hyde sometimes. You feel like, man, this is a top 5 quarterback in the league when he's cooking. Like, they have all these weapons to get it done. Offensive line is strong. Josh Jacobs has been awesome. And sometimes they just don't look like they belong. And they've had a hard time beating upper echelon of the NFC, right? Their own teams in the division, Vikings, Lions lost here, obviously the one time they played Philadelphia. So they obviously didn't matter because what happened with Washington, but like, I don't know, just step on the Bears' throat, ensure that you're doing all you can to avoid having to play Philly in this game. You just couldn't figure it out. Like, it's not super encouraging. So I think one of my favorite leans here, this is not typically a bet that I make, but was thinking about it as you were talking. I don't know what the number is. Both these teams love to run the football. They're going to have some success doing it, but Green Bay, we know, like, even if you pull out the weeks with, your boy Willis, like when they went so run heavy, they're super run heavy, even in the Jordan Love games. So we know, you have a situation here where Hurts is kind of coming back, finding his footing. Could you have a slow start to this game, under in the first quarter, an under in the first half? If we happen to be on the right side of key numbers, probably around like, I don't know, the way they juice it up a little bit, you'd probably be able to get maybe an under 23.5, under 24.5 in the first half. That would probably be pretty appealing.
Yeah, I'm looking at 23.5 FanDuel, minus 125, 22.5 DK, 365, et cetera, et cetera.
I think the 23.5 matters. I think the 22 is the wrong side of, I don't know. I could just see just a pretty run heavy game. All of a sudden it's like, damn, this game's already in the second quarter. A lot of running, kept the clock moving. All of a sudden it's, we find our footing. We got a quarterback who hasn't played on one side for, a couple of weeks now for sure, as he's trying to figure it out. So under 132, or I'm sorry. Minus 132, under 23.5 here. Okay.
Yeah, and you can obviously buy more like liquidity at like the -134, -136. So you can probably get
Yeah.
like a grand down. It's showing if you really want on 23.5 on the under. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just my main how I think the game's going to play out. Even more so when I was listening to you talk, that just kind of jumped into my head. Also on the perimeter, it's so weird. This Packers team, another split, they're like really good against perimeter wide receivers. Even without Jair Alexander, they've been one of the best from like a success rate, EPA, completion percentage over expectation. In the middle of the field, you can pick on them. So here's the problem. Jalen Hurts hates throwing over the middle of the field. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's Dallas Goedert. I want to dig in a little bit more. But yeah, we'll see. I think, under first half is a look that I like here. Maybe Philly second half, something like that. They find their footing a little bit. Because you could have a situation here where if you get bad Jordan Love, and then all of a sudden, like Philly just is able to run the ball all over the place.
Oh yeah,
Green Bay has a real hard time if that's the game plan. Like the Packers need to jump out early, try to make Philadelphia play a little bit more of a pass happy game than they want to.
yeah. The Eagles have that same problem we talked about with Baltimore. If they fall behind here, like playing catch up is not in their best interest, especially against like a opportunistic defense.
Yeah. All right. Next, the last game on Sunday, another week 1 rematch. Commanders are on the road in Tampa Bay. This is 3.5 are popping out there as well a little bit. 50.5, 50 is the total. So you can shop that around. You can see on the screen some of the numbers that we have here. You will in a moment when Connor catches up.
There you go.
It's lagging. There we go. Some of the stuff that we have here on Tampa and Washington. Yeah, so you can see 3.5 starting to get some Tampa Bay action. So that's moving out there in the marketplace as well. This one's tricky for me. I mean, there's some injuries on the Tampa Bay side, secondary wise, that have been just continuing to mount up. Looks like Antoine Winfield Jr. might be back for this one. Need to see what else is going on. They've just had cluster injuries at corner and safety, which is a problem. But there's another spot too where like the holes we've punched in the Commanders all season long have been strength of schedule related. And I think they were fair. And I think they showed up a little bit. And it's hard to say because they kind of showed up at the same time as Jane Daniels' injury. So was that like just tougher competition, or was that the rookie quarterback kind of hitting the wall and people figuring him out a little bit? Where on the other side, Tampa Bay's played like one of the hardest schedules in the league. So they're a little bit more battle tested for sure. Obviously, in the spot the last couple of years winning this division. I don't know. I lean Tampa Bay at 3.5. I'm not super interested, but what are your thoughts on Commanders Bucks?
I kind of like the over. I think the over is fun here. 49.5, 50. I think both those are solid. I think like when you think about this Bucks team, they're going to try and get pressure. They're going to try and make Jaden Daniels' life difficult. That's not always super easy. I think, especially now that he's fully healthy from his rib injury that had mid-season, like he's been running way more. He's obviously has the ability to do that. He ran for 88 yards against them in week 1 when they played. And they ended up losing that game, obviously 37-20, but again, it was high scoring. So it was, 57 total points. And that was kind of before we really saw, I think this Commanders offense come to life. Like we kind of saw them progress over the next couple of weeks, like having more than just, kind of the Cliff Kingsbury horizontal raid system that, we saw against Tampa Bay. And that's, I think the primary worry is that if that comes back, which it occasionally has reared its head throughout the season, then the Commanders are going to lose by a lot. But I think that they've kind of progressed from that. I think they're a little bit better. We saw that. The second matchup for them against the Eagles, went really well for them. Whereas the first one was, again, not as appealing. Like I think they're kind of just figuring things out. So I'm confident that there'll be points either way. I think the Bucks can score plenty on this Commanders team, regardless. So with the addition of Bucky Irving is incredible. Like they go from one of the worst running teams in the league to the best running teams in the league because they have a running back who's just an absolute dog. This guy's he's great. He's so good. You bet on his longest rush like basically every week, and it just keeps hitting. It's not the Jahmyr Gibbs free ATM longest rush one, but pretty close.
It's been pretty close. And they're hanging his line routinely, 2-3 yards shy of where they're hanging the Gibbs line. Now again, he's going over it with no issue, so it doesn't really matter. So we can continue to push the Bucky line higher too, but I think it helps them for sure. I think that, they become a little bit less one-dimensional. Baker's been playing so well too. Like, I think points is probably a good side. Like you said, in the right side of 51, probably a good look if the Commanders show up. Otherwise, I think there is a chance where Tampa Bay, and again, like give them credit for playing harder schedule. They lost most of those games, to be fair. I mean, they did go into Detroit and win, right? At the time felt like, wow, what a weird game. And then they go back home and the Broncos beat them. And I was like, what the heck? But the Broncos ended up being a team that we didn't expect. But then they beat Philly, which is really kind of surprising. They played the Ravens pretty tight, though they lost a lot of points in that game. Kept the Niners at the time, who were not completely decimated. That was, I think, the first CMC game. It was a 23-20 game. It was nice and close. Absolutely curb stomped the Chargers in LA. Then go the next week and like lay an egg in Dallas. So like we've seen some Jekyll and Hyde stuff from Tampa Bay too. I just think they're more battle tested. Baker in these moments is experienced. So Tampa 3 is the line I like, but I think your overplay is probably the best way. And I think there are props. I mean, we played the Jane Daniels rushing prop yesterday. I mean, I absolutely love that bet. Ladders. Like I'm going to jinx a bet. I just don't think he plays a full game and goes under. That's kind of it. Like, I feel like that unless he gets hurt, he's going to run for north of 46 yards in that game.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting closer to 50 at this point. I still think it's good. I think when we talked about initially, I think 49, 50 was still a buy point for us. So yeah, I like the over there for sure. I mean, there's some concern about his leg soreness, but I mean, I'm not concerned about that at all, really, to be honest. They just pulled him because he was getting whacked, and like they were getting home to him, and like they knew that he was going to need to run a ton to like keep them in that game. That didn't really matter, and like so I think Dan Quinn was just like, whatever, like we don't need to do this anymore.
He's a 23, 24-year-old kid. He's leg sore. It's not my age with leg soreness. You need to be really worried if I got leg soreness for me to get up and down the stairs. You don't have to worry about, this guy running around. He'd be fine. So put some icy hot on it. You'll be good to go, buddy.
Yeah. Also, last note on that, Jalen McMillan has played significantly better. He's finally coming into his own. Like early in the season, I took an alt on him when there was like some people that were like randomly out. And I mean, my God, this guy couldn't he had like 8 targets and 2 catches. Like he looked like, I was like, this guy's he's gonna be in the CFL by the next season. Like this is like it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. Couldn't get on the same page. It was nuts. But turned it around. He's playing really well. So that's good to see.
Yeah, running him out of the slot's a really nice matchup for some different props, maybe, because that is probably the softest way to attack this Washington secondary. And then they move Mikey Sanders still on the outside with Marshawn Lattimore and get the Lattimore Evans combo.
Love it.
Yeah, but in the slot is a nice spot for McMillan this week. All right, Monday night, last game on the board, Vikings-Rams. This one really surprises me. 47.5, 48 is the total here. Vikings short favorites here on the road. This is a spot where the Vikings did lose early this season. If you remember, there was that Sam Darnold face mask, no call late in that attempted fourth quarter comeback drive there. But I don't know if there's like a lot of recency bias baked into this line, Connor. What are your thoughts on Vikings-Rams?
Yeah, I kind of agree. To me, it feels like the Vikings have been just like an awesome team all season. And then they have one game where they just completely shit the bed in national TV. And now we're just like even against a Rams team that, I don't know. I mean, they have played well from time to time. They're not a team that the cliches are not a team you want to see in the playoffs. And I think that there's probably some truth to that, to be honest, considering Stafford, Puka, Kupp can just overcome basically any team randomly on any given day. But like from a full team perspective and like the full body of work, I would have thought this would be closer to 3, just like for the Vikings. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, I think, my lean here would be Minnesota. I guess, the issue is that it wasn't just like how the Vikings like face planted. It was that Detroit played super aggressively and got home to Darnold and was like basically making him see ghosts again for the first time since, that New England game. And now you get another opportunity here where the Rams can get pressure from time to time. And I would assume we're going to try and make his life difficult similarly. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think Minnesota, I think the best course of action is to ignore last week and bet Minnesota, but I'm curious where your head's at. I
think Minnesota is the best bet on the board this week. I don't really understand it with the Rams. I think the defense is suspect. I think people just remember the 44-42 win against the Bills that happened in early December, and they just have forgot everything else around and after from the Rams. Sometimes this offense stalls out, and it's like pretty meh. They
For
went
sure.
in like 19-9 in the Meadowlands against the Jets, 13 points next week against the Cardinals. So not strong defenses. Then the next week they lose at home. I mean, that didn't matter with the Seahawks game, but and the Niners game was in weather and conditions. Sure. Barely beat the Saints the week before the Bills game. Got absolutely crushed by Philadelphia the week before.
Yeah.
Barely beat New England in New England. The Pats had a chance to win that game. Miami went into LA and won. I don't know. Like, it's just sometimes where this team on paper, yeah, Stafford's a veteran. You have the Stafford and McVay. You feel really good about that, but it's a really balanced, really good Vikings team that can beat you in a number of ways. And Detroit's, I think, an awesome football team. That's a tough environment to go into, and they just big plays and all of a sudden forces you to play with one hand tied behind your back. I don't think the Rams are going to do that here. Minnesota is really hard to run the football on, and really no one's really done it except Jahmyr Gibbs. So, like, I think we're going to have a number of times in the next 5 years where Gibbs is an outlier in the situations. I don't necessarily think Kyron Williams, who, like, for a guy who puts up some serious numbers, has like no explosive runs. His explosive rush rate is like less than 2%, I think, on the season. They just grind you down, and it's a hard team to run the football against. So, and it's kind of one-sided. It's not even like it was Puka and Cooper Kupp. Like, I don't know what's going on with Cooper Kupp. It feels like it's just Puka right now. So I don't know. I just think the Vikings are significantly better. I feel like this would be 3.5 if that game was even somewhat close. Even if the Vikings lose and it was close, it's probably at least 3. I don't know. Less than 3 Minnesota feels like the play for me if you just kind of block out the noise. So I like it quite a bit. I bet it at 2.5, and I feel okay. Like, thought it was going to go to 3, but I've lost the best of the number. Still on the right side of key numbers and stuff. But yeah, I think Minnesota's the right side.
I like it. I mean, with Kyron, like, you're telling me that undersized 5th round draft pick is not all that good. I mean, he's great in terms of fantasy. He compiles a lot of stats. His usage is wild. Is he that good of a player? No, he's not cutting it back and turning on the Jets for like 40 yards like Jahmyr Gibbs is, and just like
almost never.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were sitting at that bar over the summer and I was in the middle of a fantasy draft and we were debating between picking, like, I don't remember who it was. It was like Jahmyr Gibbs or like Drake London or something like that. And Silva's like, dude, Jahmyr Gibbs is like Jamal Charles. And I was like, no, he's not. And he's like, no, like, he is. Like, I promise. And I was like, all right. We actually didn't pick Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think we picked someone else. But just like that stuck with me because I was like, ever since then, I've kind of viewed him like, oh, this is just Jamal Charles. And he's just been Jamal Charles because he's like,
yeah.
And now they're giving him like way more work and like,
well, yeah.
It's electric. It's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, that was the case against him in fantasy. So you're, to your point, you're still getting, you're trying to pay first round freight for a guy getting maybe 12 to 14 touches with David Montgomery healthy. Well, we've seen this like jailbreak version with, very little Craig Reynolds and a ton of like passing game work, and spike in carries has been pretty awesome to watch. He's been really good. So yeah, look, and they lost Blake Corum, who actually had a little bit of juice, who they were mixing in a little bit. So like, I don't know. It seems to be like Kyron can handle 25 plus carries, but he's not going to get more explosive as he's getting beat down. Right. So I don't know. I like Minnesota quite a bit. Yes, the Rams can get pressure. Yes, that was the problem last week. It was a heavy blitz situation where they blitzed on 67% of the dropbacks Detroit did last week, just the highest rate that any team blitzed in any game all season long. And, it doesn't seem to be something the Rams want to do that much, but maybe they try to replicate that game plan. I think maybe Minnesota's more prepared for it this week. So Minnesota less than 3, I think, is the play.
Love it.
All right. Good stuff as always. Appreciate our friends over at ProfitX. Again, check that out. If you have any questions, hit us up directly. Again, peer versus peer. You can see here better prices, less juice. Losers pay winners. Great place to play, and available in over 40 states. So don't be shy. Reach out if you have any questions and get set up over there. Very, very, very easy to play. We will be back on Friday, prop drop show. Myself and Connor and high slop. The board's out. Board's pretty hefty. So sometimes we're waiting for stuff on a Friday, hoping that we can keep some stuff live that we can give out fresh on Friday at this point. Cause especially FanDuel jumped the gun Monday afternoon, full board for FanDuel. So
yeah,
I just want to say thank you. I'd rather have that than not. So it's pretty cool to see.
I love it. I mean, I'm probably just going to go back and release a prop right after this, to be honest. I got one that I've written down, and then there's a couple more that I have waiting. And, this is just like initial glance stuff too. Like I got to like do even more research and dive deeper, and I'm sure we'll find a couple more. So it's going to be a good weekend, some good games, and obviously our Friday show will be a lot of fun as always too.
Yeah. Come back for that. That is 4 bets on the YouTube channel. Move the line wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 4 prop drop show. We'll be back for that. For Connor, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next time. Thanks everybody.